Family, history, memories, what we feel about the people we love and what we know about where they came from and what they came through helps us form our sense of our identity and our sense of ourselves. My name is Charlene Gilbert. I'm a professor at the University of Toledo, and I'm also a documentary filmmaker. In my film Homecoming, Sometimes I'm Haunted by Memories of Red Dirt and Clay, I explored the history of African American land loss in the rural South. Today, in partnership with WGTE and the Henry Louis Gates public television program African American Lives, I'll explore more of my own family history in a much more complex and thorough way through the powerful new tool of DNA research. Today, I'm about to find out about the results of my DNA test. So we came here to the University of Toledo. I'm going to meet with Dr. John Gray, a genetics expert, and I'm going to find out the history of my DNA and where I'm from. Hello.
Hello.
Hello,
Charlene. Pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet
Welcome
you,
to the
Dr.
biology department to the lab.
Thank you so
Come
much
on
for
in,
having us.
We'll try to explain your DNA results.
Okay, great. Now I have this new information that links me in a very specific way to a place beyond the United States. I'm gonna, fingers crossed, say it links me to the African continent, in a very specific way. And so I think that's exciting, but I think it's like the science will now give me this additional information. It will help me begin to sort of put the pieces together of my family story. Overnight, I just have this new information that helps complicate and specify my experience in this as an African American. So I'm, excited about it, and I think that it's going to be transformative in some ways. But I think the core of my sense of self and identity will remain the same and just be enhanced by this new information.
It's a very painless process, okay? All you have to do to get some DNA from somebody is to take a little applicator, you just scrape the inside of your cheek, and you just insert it into a little tube, close the lid, and send it off to the lab for testing.
Based on that, they can tell me what part of the world I'm from. They can tell me what my nationality is. What if I'm from many parts of the world? Does it tell me that? Is it my paternal and my maternal DNA?
The test that you did allowed you to trace your maternal lineage back to a group of people in another country in another part of the world. There are other tests that could trace your paternal lineage and more recent history. In your case, again, the information goes longer term history, a little bit longer than what was written down or maybe verbally passed on. And in that sense, DNA is an extra piece of information that we may not get through any other genealogy method.
African Americans face a unique experience, a unique problem because of the uniquely dehumanizing experience that we experience in this country. We're just in our infancy and utilizing this tool. It has been used only, for less than a generation. And just like historians consistently, vet their sources and vet the accuracy of the information that they get from the sources, we're still vetting and improving these biological or these genetics tools to know who we are.
I was always curious to know exactly. I knew that that as an African American, that my ancestors were from Africa. I remember being, wanting to read more about Africa and wanting to know more about our family story. But I really was envious of people who could actually say specifically where they were from, who my great-grandfather was and who my great-grandmother was. And all that was always really sort of, I was always very curious about that part of our family story and collecting the stories. And so the DNA test offered the opportunity to finally discover my very specific connection to the continent of Africa. And so that's one of the reasons I was really excited about participating in this project.
All of this evidence shows that no human being is more human than another. In fact, from a scientific point of view, we are all one human race. And indeed, we trace our past. We're all fascinated by our past. We can very often have a name, a family name. We have a family story. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a photograph of your ancestors. These are things that are passed down to us that allow us to connect with the past. But in the absence of that, you also have something that was passed on directly from your ancestors, and that is the DNA itself. So Charlene, are you curious to know more about your past?
I'm sort of curious, excited, nervous, but
Well, let's go and take a look at the tests and see what they can tell us.
great, thank
All
you.
right, great.
I really stuck strongly to the notion that I didn't want to find out until the day of filming, because I really wanted to be in the moment when I did find out, and so I resisted the urge to look at anything, and I just didn't want to know until the day it happened. I continued to sort of look forward to the opportunity to sort of know more and begin to think about sort of what I might do with that information, how I might follow up on it, thinking about the potential it might offer. And of course, you go through all the crazy things every time you hear a story about someone who finds out they're related to some, odd person that's counter to who they are. Yeah, so I think I went through a few permutations of what would be shocking.
What the test would say is that you belong to haplogroup L2A.
Okay.
What does that mean? It means that you are found, this haplogroup dates about 5,000 years ago, and it links most closely with Angola in the south and west of Africa. So it is most likely on your maternal side, way back 6, 7 generations ago or so, they would have come originally from Angola. Now, there is another historical twist on this, and that is that we know that the Portuguese were colonizing Angola.
Right.
They were not involved in the slave trade as much, and any Africans that were transported to the New World traveled to, of all places, Brazil. Most of them went from Angola to Brazil.
So interesting.
So I don't know if you know anything, his stories about coming from South America, but it may be that your family and your maternal side came to the US, but they may have gone through Brazil. There may have been a generation or two or more that spent some time in Brazil.
It was actually quite surprising. I kept thinking that I wouldn't be that surprised by whatever the results were, and I had all my worst case scenarios in mind. But the first thing that sort of surprised me, took me back, were the first words out of his mouth, or almost the first words, the second words. He told me that I was descended from a group of people in Angola, and then he said, and as you know, most of those people went to Brazil. I just thought, that's just outrageous, because that was like the one connection that I was probably 99% sure would never show up. And then trying to figure out how my ancestors got to the United States from Angola was just, was really exciting for me. That, to me, just leads me all these new directions, and I am really excited now to kind of find out more. But it really took my breath away when he said Brazil and Angola. I was just like, that's amazing.
The well-known historian Eric Williams wrote about what's called the triangular trade, meaning a substance that ships were sent from parts of England primarily, and down into there's that node, and then down into West Africa, picking up bodies for labor, and then taking those bodies over to the Americas to engage in primary production, primary in terms of agriculture, sugar and rice and cotton, etc. And then taking those products, then those industrial goods and those agricultural goods, back to Europe to run their industry. So that closed the triangle there. And some of those industrial goods were also found their way into North America as well.
There's a huge potential for what the DNA offers us. I think it offers the African Americans as a collective the opportunity to really fill in the missing chapters of our story, and to really begin to explore our very specific connection to Africa. Now we're going to be able to sort of look at those pieces really specifically and pull them out, and sort of, and I feel like our ancestors in some ways will be joyful to know that, all that information that was hidden in our culture and our religion and our music and our songs, now sort of is able to come out and be celebrated.